so good to be with you again today, and I just pray that you will experience God's peace as you enter into His perfect timing for the whole of your life. Amen. My timing and God's timing don't always agree. I have plans, I have hopes, and I have all these sorts of things that I put in place. I want certain things to happen at certain times so that I'm successful. But often what I find is that my timing that I've planned out and God's timing, they come into conflict. In fact, there's a headbutting going on between His timing and mine. And it just doesn't quite work. Realistically, God's timing can be so frustrating at times. It can be so frustrating because it seems like I know when the perfect time is for everything and God's not listening. Isn't that the truth? The reality is that if I look back in hindsight, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, I look back and I can see how perfect God's timing is and how imperfect my timing was. You see, if I had have gotten the things when I want it, I would have wrecked them. If I had have gotten that job that I wanted at a certain time, it could have wrecked me. If I had have gotten into that relationship at the time that I wanted, I could have had a bad relationship. You see, God provided me with the right relationship at the right time as I waited on Him. The beautiful thing about waiting on God is it brings peace. Look at what Psalm 25 verses 4 and 5 say. Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. On you I wait all the day. The psalmist is saying that, God, you know my paths. You know what my future looks like. You know exactly what's going to happen. You are the author and the finisher of my faith. You know all my days. You knit me together in my mother's womb. You know all about me. You know exactly what I need at certain times. Now show me your ways. Show me the paths. Show me the experiences that I must have. The psalmist is saying, and I will wait on you all day. There's this continual waiting on God for God to reveal the next part of the journey in His timing. Sunday Adelasia says this, God's time and our time have to coincide. Otherwise, we will not be successful in life. And he's absolutely right. Unless there's a meshing between God's timing and my timing, unless there's this coming together and me surrendering to God's timing, there will never be no peace. And if there's no peace, there's no success. I need to mesh with God, my timing and His. I need to surrender myself to His perfect timing. Germaine Kent writes this, with God, there's always an appointed time for things. And when you put Him first, trust in His timing and keep the faith, miracles happen. Joseph was a young man who was despised by his brothers because of his cockiness, his arrogance. You see, one day Joseph decided to tell his brothers, one day you will bow down to me and I will rule over you. He was their younger brother. Their egos were bruised from this encounter. So at the opportune time for them, they got rid of Joseph. They threw him in a well and sold him off to slave traders. You imagine how Joseph feels at this time, because he knew that God had a plan for him. God had a promise over his life that he would rule people. But he finds himself as a slave. Can you imagine what he's thinking? God, what's going on here? I'm meant to be a ruler over people and I find myself as a slave. This just doesn't add up. It's not working out. Your timing stinks, God. It's crazy. He eventually finds himself in Potiphar's house, and in Potiphar's house he's given a position of authority, and he's well fed, he's well dressed, and he's looking the goods. And you can imagine how he's thinking right now. This is more like it, God. Your timing's getting better and things are working out the way that they should. But all of a sudden, Potiphar's wife thinks he looks a bit too good too. And she decides that I want to have my way with this boy. And so she calls him over, and Joseph says, because he's a man of integrity and he respects his master so much, he says, absolutely not. This is not going to happen. And with that, Joseph tries to escape, but she grabs hold of his tunic and cries out that she's been assaulted by Joseph. And with that, Joseph finds himself in prison. All of a sudden, everything's just crumbled again. Can you imagine how he feels? He's in prison now. God, you have a promise over my life that I'll be a ruler, and I'm in prison. How am I ever going to be a ruler from this position? I don't understand it. Your timing is crazy. I just don't understand it. You are frustrating me, God. Into the prison, Pharaoh throws two of his household, the baker and the butler. He threw them in there because they offended him. And into the midst of Joseph, these two men come into his life, and they have dreams, and Joseph, he interprets those dreams. And all of a sudden, the Pharaoh decides that he'll have his staff members back. And before they go back, Joseph says to them, remember me. Remember me. Surely you got to remember me. So they come back into the household, the butler and the baker. The baker, the offense that he gave was so bad that the Pharaoh had his head chopped off. But the butler is restored to his prime position once again. But the butler forgets Joseph. And for 2 more years, Joseph is sitting in that jail cell, wondering, when is God's timing ever going to come into play? When is he ever going to get me to the place he promised me? 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream, and the butler remembers Joseph. You see, here's the issue. If the butler had remembered Joseph right away and got Joseph out of that jail cell, then he would never have been able to interpret the dream of Pharaoh. And if he had never interpreted the dream of Pharaoh, he would never have been second in charge of the palace. So from one bit of timing of God, Joseph went from being a prisoner to a ruler. God can speak into your life. His timing is absolutely perfect. Look what Lisa Bouvier writes. Sometimes arriving too quickly is detrimental. It is dangerous to arrive without our character mature or intact. In the process of timing, God allows us to grow. He allows us to mature. There are certain things that we have to achieve so that we can be the person God needs us to be in the perfect timing of His choosing. Have a great day and live in the timing of God. You will not regret it. Be blessed.